यस, तो स्क्रीन को शेयर करता हूँ और एसक्यूएल के अंदर DML इंस्टेड ऑफ ट्रिगर क्या होता है, कैसे काम करता है, ये सारी चीज़ मैं आपको स्टेप बाय स्टेप बता रहा हूँ। प्रैक्टिस आप लोग करते रहिएगा ट्रिगर के ऊपर। ट्रिगर काफ़ी इम्पोर्टेंट चैप्टर है एसक्यूएल में। DML इंस्टेड ऑफ ट्रिगर्स। Instead of triggers is executed in place of the insert, update or delete operation. Instead of trigger, instead of insert trigger, instead of update trigger, and instead of delete trigger. Instead of trigger, are executed before constraint checks are performed on the table and after the creation of the instead and deleted table. We can apply, एक नोट पॉइंट यहाँ पे लिखवा रहा हूँ, we can apply only one instead of trigger in table. आफ्टर ट्रिगर तो आप कई बार लगा रहे थे एक ही टेबल के ऊपर, कई ट्रिगर आपने फायर किया था, बट इंस्टेड ऑफ ट्रिगर क्या कहता है कि आप एक टेबल में एक ही इंस्टेड ऑफ यूज़ कर पाएंगे। ठीक है, तो चलिए इंस्टेड ऑफ ट्रिगर को सबसे पहले इंसर्ट पे देखते हैं, फिर अपडेट पे और फिर डिलीट पे, है ना। तो इसके लिए मैं एसक्यूएल सर्वर को ओपन कर लेता हूँ। ये रहा हमारा एसक्यूएल सर्वर। Let's connect to server, go to new query, select any database, that is testdb, and inside that I have many tables. I am selecting department here. Department having there is no, yes, it is having ID name and is selected, very nice. And I'm applying instead of trigger on this department table. So let's write comment line, create instead of trigger for insert. Let's create trigger tr department instead of insert. On department instead of insert has been print you are not allowed to insert data in this table. And what will happen, I am just executing this query. trigger gets applied on a department table, and what this trigger will do, when you try to insert data in department table, this will print to the message, you are not allowed to insert data in this table. Let's see. Try to insert some record in department table to see trigger fired. Let's insert into department ID, that is I think auto generated, name, and it's selected. It is HR1, या फिर you can say take any department like sales. It's selected, that is 0, and try to insert this record. When you try to insert this record, you are seeing here a message, you are not allowed to insert data in this table. This message is basically printed by trigger, which is already applied on department table for insert operation. So this is instead of trigger, and instead of trigger that can apply on a table, and in a table we can apply only one instead of trigger. So for same, if you want to create trigger for update statements, let create trigger for update statement here. Create instead of trigger for update, and I am creating trigger TR, that is on, I am trying to update department table. TR department update on department, instead of update as begin, print you are not allowed to update data in this table. And what will happen when you try to execute this command is successfully executed. But what I just said earlier, you can apply instead of trigger on single table, yani a table that can allow single instead of trigger. Just for example, if I have created instead of trigger for insert operations, we cannot create instead of trigger for the same operations. We are creating for the different operations, so it is okay. So let's try to update some records of department table to see trigger fire. Update department name equal to HR, where ID equal to 4. So when you try to, let's update table, no need here table keywords, set keyword is required. So when you try to update this department, this will give you a message, you are not allowed to update data in this table. And this message is basically coming from trigger, because during creation of trigger I have printed a message inside trigger body. When any updation made in the department table, this message will get printed on the screen. So first of all, I created trigger for insert, and second I created trigger for update, and then after I am creating instead of trigger for delete operation, because this come under DML. DML trigger categorized into two parts. One is instead of trigger and second one is after trigger. So in the last class I discussed after trigger with DML operations like insert, update, delete, and today I am discussing instead of trigger on DML operation, that is insert, update and delete. So I have already created trigger, that is instead of trigger for insert and delete operation, and now I am creating trigger for update operation. So just for delete operations. I have already created for insert and update, and now creating for delete operations. Let's create a trigger. That is, instead of trigger for delete, create trigger tr, that is department delete on department, that is for instead of delete as begin, print you are not allowed to delete anything, and end here. Let's try to execute this trigger. Executed successfully, and now try to delete some record from table to sheet trigger fire, and this is instead of trigger. So instead of trigger gets fired when any deletion made in the table. Let's see how. Try to delete some records from department table to sheet trigger fire. Let's delete from department where id equal to 3. When you try to execute this query, what will happen? The message will be printed on the screen, you are not allowed to delete anything. So these 3 triggers I have created on the table for different operation. Means we cannot create instead of trigger for same operation multi times. We can create different, we can create the name of trigger that will be different for the different purpose we can create on the table, right? So the next, wait for a moment please. Okay, not an issue. Now what I am doing again, I am just creating a new table, that is department audit table, and I want to track the information of other table into that newly created table using trigger. So let's see how. Create table, that is department audit table having audit ID, int primary key, identity and audit information, that is varchar max. So let's execute this table. Now new table gets created with the name department audit table, and this table having 2 columns, one is audit ID and another is audit info. The value of audit ID will get incremented 1 by 1, and whereas the value of audit informations I will store with the help of trigger. So I'm going to create instead of trigger, create instead of trigger to insert data in audit table. Let's see. Create trigger tr department instead of trigger, that is insert audit on department, and instead of insert as begin, insert into department, insert into audit table, department audit table, values, that would be someone tries to insert data into the name of table with the cast, with get date I want to print the current date and time as varchar. So this message along with current date and time will insert it in your newly created table. And one thing I want to monitor here, whether this trigger gets created or not, because I am creating initiative trigger for the same operation, that is insert. If it is created, I will make some changes in our notes. Let's try to execute. End is giving some errors. Why? As insert into this table values, that is cost is basically ending here. One more bracket is missing. Let's put one more bracket. Now end is okay. So try to execute this trigger. Okay, so we can see that whatever I have mentioned in theory cannot create trigger that initiate of department, because on initiate of insert trigger already exists on this object. It means what? Earlier what I just said to you, for the same operation we cannot create multi instead of triggers on same table, right? So I am just changing note. We can apply only one state trigger for single operation, for same operation in a table, है ना? For same operation means either for insert, for delete, for update, we can apply only one state of trigger, whereas we can apply multiple after trigger for same purpose, for same operation, but instead of trigger that can apply only single for same operation. For different operation we can apply different instead of triggers and multiple instead of triggers, but for same operation we can create only single instead of trigger on same table. So here we cannot create insert trigger on the same table. So what I am doing, I am just creating trigger on employee table or student table. Let's check the student table. It having multiple columns, so let's check any other table that inside the test TV database, or just create some new table, that is department with underscore, the having ID and identity and name varchar 30. I'm just creating this table for testing trigger, nothing else, and I would like to put this name here because I want to perform insert of trigger for the insert operation on the new table, not on the same table. So I hope you are clearing with this statement. And when you try to execute this trigger will get executed successfully, because I want to apply trigger. I want to create insert of trigger for insert operation on different table. And when you try to insert any record inside this table, what will happen? The information someone tries to insert data into along with current date and time will insert it in this department audit table. So let's try to insert some record into department table to sheet trigger file. Insert into department name, that is what IT. The department values, that is ID, because why I'm not inserting ID, because ID is identity. And let's see what happened. That is affected, and here two row affected, and because one row added to department table and another one by the trigger inserted into department audit table. So try to see department audit table, we can see the information that's sent by the trigger, that's sent by the instead of trigger. So let's check the information inside department audit table. When you try to execute this, we can see the information. Someone tries to insert data into table, and the date, that is 3rd of October 2023 and the current time 9:32 p.m. So this information gets stored and gets sent by the trigger into department audit table. Why? Because during creation of trigger I have just inserted some information in newly created table, that is department audit table. So make sure that we cannot create instead of trigger multi times for the same operation, but we can create multiple triggers on the same table for different purpose, for not the same purpose. So here I just trying to insert some record into new table, and same you can also try to insert for update and delete also. So I'm not doing any example for that, and we can see also, if you want to see the example, I'm just giving an example for update also. Creating update trigger to insert data in audit table. Create trigger tr department, and instead of update on department, and instead of update, what will happen here? When you try to update some record, some new message will go to the newly created table, that is audit employee, audit department. So let insert into audit employee. I have created audit department audit table. So let's copy this and try to insert some information, that is someone tries to update in department table. Along with that, I would like to send current date and time. So let's convert with the help of cast function, get date and the current date and time, and I would like to print this get and get date in the form of varchar. That's why I'm typecasting current date and time in the varchar form, because the complete line that will be varchar, and this will be printed when trigger gets fired. Let's put the end, try to execute this query. Executed successfully? No, because cannot create trigger tr department shadow table department, because instead of update trigger already created, because on the yes here need underscore hyphen. Why? Because on the department table I have already created instead of for update right, and we cannot create multiple instead of the same operation on same table. So that's why I'm changing the name, that is underscore department, because this is our new table I have created here. So when you try to execute this query, you can see that query gets successfully executed. Nice. And now try to update some record of department table to sheet trigger fire. Update department, set name equal to IT, where id equal to 1. When you try to execute this, what will happen? We can see that 1 reflected, 0 reflected. Now see, newly created tables there may be some information. So select star from department audit table, and we can see that let's copy this, paste here, try to execute this query, and we can see that one more line added to the same table, and the line is someone tries to update department table, October 3rd 2023, timing 9:36 p.m. So this information basically sent by this trigger, because I have created instead of trigger for update operation on department table. So what will happen when you try to update any record of department table, instead of trigger will get fired, and what it will do, it will insert some information into other table to display a message to user, to developer, right? And same we can also create instead of trigger for delete operation. So in the last, because we are running on DML trigger, because DML trigger defined in two ways, that is instead of an after trigger. So I have already finished after trigger in last session, in last class, and today we are finishing instead of trigger in the form of DML. DML means data manipulation language, and basically inside of the delete operation that come under DML command. So creating delete trigger to insert data in audit table, department audit table. You can see department audit table. So what I'm doing here, create trigger tr department, that is instead of delete on department, instead of delete as begin, insert into department, insert into department audit table, because in this table I would like to add some information. What informations I would like to add? Someone tries to update, or someone tried to delete department table. Trigger basically used for security reason. If you would like to just know, if you would like to track your table, if you are to track your database, we can use trigger. Trigger will send a message for every period of time. Get it as worker 50, and let's try to execute this code with the end operator here. Let's try to execute this. So this queries get successfully executed, and what I have created a trigger, that is new trigger for delete operation on department table. So let's try to delete some record from department table to sheet trigger fire. Delete from department where id equal to 1. When you try to delete this, what will happen? Row affected, and we can see inside the department audit table one more row will be added there, because I have created a new trigger for delete operation, right? So we can see that one more row that added to the department audit table, and this row contains someone tries to delete department table, October 3rd 2023, timing 9:40 p.m. So this is basically instead of trigger. So I have finished instead of trigger today, and one more trigger. Basically this trigger come under the DML command, and after that we have to start DDL trigger, because in the start we have already discussed that triggers are categorized into three parts: DML, DDL and logon trigger. So in the last today's class I basically discussed DML triggers, and DML triggers in the form of after trigger and instead of trigger, and now we are going to start DDL triggers. So what I will do today, I will just start theory part of DDL trigger, and let's see if I start. Let's start with the, but before that I just copy this query and paste for you. Yes, this is the example of instead of trigger in the form of DML, and now I'm starting DDL trigger. Fine. So let's give the headlines, that is DDL instead of trigger, sorry, DDL trigger, not instead of, it is DDL trigger. DDL basically stand for data definition language, and basically create, alter, drop, these commands that come under DDL triggers in SQL. So first of all I would like to write some notes. What is DDL? What type of operations are going to perform using DDL trigger? So DDL is a basically data definition language triggers execute a store procedure when DDL events such as create, alter, and drop statements occur in the database or the server. What is the use of DDL triggers? Let's point out this. DDL triggers can be used to prevent modification in the database. A schema. What is a schema? Basically, it is table physical structure. A schema is a collection of objects such as tables, views, and etc. in database. All the physical structure of database is called a schema. So if you want to execute some code or message in response to a specific DDL event, to prevent certain changes to your database schema. These are the purpose why we are using DDL triggers. Audit or check the changes that the users are making to the database structure. Let's create a table under database. Fine, I'm just going to create trigger that is for creating a table. So let's delete this query. Inside the same database, I would like to create a table, but table will be created with the help of trigger, right? Before that table was not available in the database. So let's see. Create table under database with the help of trigger, with the help of DDL trigger, because under DDL command what type of commands come? Basically create, alter, and drop. So I would like to just create table. So create trigger tr DDL create on database. For create table you have to write this. For create table as begin print new table created. So when you try to create any table, this message will be printed with the help of trigger. What this trigger is doing here, when you try to create any new table inside the database, so this trigger will print you this message. Let's try to create a new table to see the trigger fire. Try to create table to see trigger fired. Create table, my table, that is id int. I want to create this new table, and what will happen when you try to execute this? Some message will be printed. You can see that command completed successfully. Actually the name of database here we need to give. Let's see that database that I want to on database test DB. Let's alter this. Okay, and execute this. Okay, what is problem there? The specified event type is not valid specified target object. Why? Create trigger, that is when on database test db for create table. It's not taking test db database. Okay, nice. And I'm just want to create this table. First of all, create a new database, and then after try to execute this query. So I am creating a new database, that is create database my trigger db. Let's create this database. Fine. And try to use this my trigger database. Nice. And try to execute this line. Nice. And let's try to create this table whether trigger is fired or not. So now the trigger is fired. So when you want to create a DDL trigger for create operation, first of all you need to create a new database to get refreshed the value, and after that you have to use that database, because I have just created a new database, and after that I use that database my trigger db. But this is not any predefined database, this is our user defined database. I have given the name, you can give any name to this database. And then after I have created a trigger with the name trddl create one on database. This is the command, this is the query you have to mention here. For create table, this is also a command, as begin print new table created. What will happen? Because I have created DDL trigger on this database my trigger db, right? And when you create any table, when you create any new table inside this database my trigger underscore db, the message will be printed new table created, because on DDL trigger has fired for create operation. It's very clear. Now the second thing, I would like to alter the table. So let's see what happened. So I'm just going to create a new trigger, that is for alter. Write a query to perform alter table under same database, and creating trigger for alter, right? Create a DDL trigger for alter table. So let's create trigger tr DDL trigger table alter. So this is the name of trigger on database. This is the command for alter underscore table. This is also a command, as begin print you have just altered a table, right? So this message will be printed by the help of trigger, because I would like to create a trigger for alter operation. So when you alter table, what will happen? First of all, let's try to see my table 1. Inside that there is no any value, so I'm just adding some record inside into, and there is only one column inside the my table. So I will alter. So okay, just altering table. Try to alter table to sheet trigger fire. Alter table, my table. This is the name of table. Yes, nice. That is my table 1. So let's copy this my table 1, and I would like to add one more column because I am just applying alter command here. Alter table, my table 1, add a name varchar 50. So this is new column I would like to add inside my table 1. What will happen? This message will be printed by trigger. Why? Because I have created DDL trigger for alter operation. So when you try to alter the table which is already created under the trigger, so what will happen? The message will be printed. When you try to alter the table, message will be printed. When you try to alter any table inside this database, the message will be printed. Let's see. Yes, the message will be printed. You have just altered a table because this trigger is working for alter command, right? And the last, that is for delete, that is for drop, not for delete. So create trigger for drop table, right? Create trigger tr DDL table drop, right? On database, this is the command for drop underscore table as begin print you have dropped a table. This message will get printed by the help of trigger when you try to drop any table. So let's see. Try to drop table to see trigger fire. So I'm just applying drop table name, that is my table 1. So let's see what happened. After dropping the table, the message will be printed. You have dropped a table. So this is DDL trigger, and inside and the under DDL trigger, what the commands I have executed? I have executed create table command, alter table command, and the drop table command, because in theory part I have already mentioned DDL trigger work for insert, create, alter, and drop statement. Nice. So now the DDL trigger is finished, and the next trigger, that is logon trigger, we will discuss later in class. So for today, this is all for today. Now I'm creating PDF and sending for you. What we need to do, just make handwritten notes, then after do many practice. So DML instead of trigger and DDL trigger. Get finished today. I'm sending PDF file. DML insert and instead of. Trigger part 2. Send successfully. Now try to note this and practice this. All the best for today. See you next day.